Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Gen Z Hoops podcast. Today, I'm joined by the head coach of the Cushing Academy men's basketball team, James Cormier. Coach Corm, how's everything going, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Like I said, off air here, you did a great job with your research and super flattered that you were able to dig up all that stuff from my playing days and then obviously early in coaching career and then my time here at Cushing. So appreciate the research there.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Coach. So let's jump right into it. So you coach at almost every level. Let's talk Division III hoops, Ivy League, elite prep schools, and camps as well. But you've been at Cushing for almost a decade now. So when people hear your name, what do you want them to associate it with as a coach?
Yeah, and from a prep school lens, I would love to have a reputation in my relationship with my players, the trust and belief that we have in one another. I'd like to be described as a coach who really develops his kids on and off the floor, has a reputation of college placement, and to echo that or to build off that, college success, placing kids in college and allowing them to have early success because of the preparation and sort of the schedule and system that we have here at Cushing. When it comes to like a pure like basketball reputation, I'd like to be known as a defensive coach. I mean, I think we do a good job running offense, but our identity since I've been here has always been hard-nosed man-to-man defense and occasionally a 2-3 matchup zone that causes fits even for shooting teams. So that defensive side of the ball is sort of how we establish our connection as a group, and we do a really good job covering for one another and playing with intensity, and that's going to translate to the offensive side of the ball, sharing the ball, hard cuts, screening angles, just understanding reads. And I think building a connection on defense allows that to happen more organically on the offensive side of the ball.
So when you first started coming up with your defensive philosophy, was there ever like a certain team or like a certain style of play that you watched film on? It could be like an NBA team, a college program, etc.
Good question. Now I watch a ton of Iowa State. I love what they do defensively. They're great in their gaps. Their ball pressure is elite. They have a unique ball screen coverage and multiple ways of playing it. I used to love Texas Tech, specifically like when Chris Beard got there. That was probably like my third or fourth year. He did a great job keeping it on his side. And, I don't ice ball screens. I would like to someday. I think it's a great tactic. But those are two programs and two coaches that I've watched consistently, Grant McCaslin, and they're from a similar coaching tree as well. Those would be the two. A big part of my basketball background comes obviously from my father, who coached in college for 21 years and then in the NBA for 13 years. So I've learned a ton from him. And then my first year, I actually played exclusively zone at Lemoyne, that 2-3 matchup that I mentioned. So I learned a ton. I didn't love it because I'm a 5'9" guard, and I was fairly quick and a decent athlete and a hard-nosed type player. So I like to get up into the ball and fight through ball screens and chase guys off screens and all that stuff. So I knew I didn't necessarily want to coach the 2-3 as our main defense. But my first job at Rutgers Newark, Coach Joe Loughran, he did an unbelievable job in pack line defense, and I learned a lot through him. And then read a bunch of Tony Bennett stuff when I was young and kind of understood the pack line idea. And I don't know if we're completely adopted the pack line. There's some little nuances that we don't necessarily work on that would be traditional pack line, but that's sort of the frame of what we do, the pack line system.
So before we get into the wins and more exclusives on your program at Cushing, let's start with your upbringing. So like growing up, when did basketball become your passion? Where did your passion originate from?
Yeah, probably. I got three older brothers as well, so I was going to all their games and shooting at halftime and running around with the ball in my hand. My dad was running camps for Fairfield University growing up, where he was the head coach through my elementary school years. And then always just playing with older kids, whether it be my brother's friends coming over and hanging out or going to the park. I'm old enough where that was a huge thing in my town, where I would get dropped off at 10 o'clock in the morning and, get picked up at 7:30 at night. So, just the idea of competing. I grew up playing football, baseball, and basketball, soccer at a really, really young age, but transitioned to football. And whatever sport I was playing was always my thing. Like that was my favorite sport. And I think that's, people ask me, why you love coaching, and it's really the camaraderie and the competition. I'm definitely a hoops junkie. Don't get me wrong. I study the game. I love the game, but that competitive element is what makes me tick and sort of my why, as people say.
So in college, you were a team captain, and you were a really good shooter. You shot 40% from three, like no joke. But was there ever a moment when you realized that you wanted to transition into coaching?
Yeah, I knew that I always wanted to be a coach. I had a sense just growing up, 5'9", 5'10" on a good day, that I wasn't necessarily going to make money playing basketball. And that was important to me. Like I was always an entrepreneur. I was, mowing people's lawns when I was, second, third grade. I was shoveling. I was, working landscaping, lining fields, whatever I could do in the summer to make some money. So it was two things that I was kind of focused on, like do what you love or make money. And obviously getting into coaching, I decided to go the path of doing what I love. And again, like I was fortunate to grow up in a household where my older brothers understood the game. They understood athletics. My oldest brother's a sports agent, baseball specific, actually. And, my dad at the kitchen table, we'd be moving salt shakers around and talking X's and O's at 13, 14 years old. So I always felt like I had a pretty good IQ and sense as to, what might work or what I might try and do as a coach. And this is at like, even before high school, I kind of had a sense like I was going to jump into coaching. There was a bit of a reluctancy because you saw how much my dad moved around and how much time he had to spend away from the family on the road, whether it be scouting or with his teams, traveling, recruiting in the off seasons, things like that. But fortunately for me, my wife and I grew up together. We've been dating since 13 years old. So she was around and saw the deal, and she's been a great partner and, completely understands the deal, which is so important if you're going to be successful in this industry.
So when you were in college, like how did the player you were basically shape the coach that you are today? Because I know like you alluded to the competitiveness and loving that grit and grind throughout the season, but was there ever, let's take it like a, a deeper level.
Yeah, I saw something online yesterday from Al McGuire, who's like a famous coach I mean, I didn't follow him at all, but I have two kids that play at Marquette. NJ was here for a year, and he's killing it as a freshman, and then Chase Ross graduated from here. So I'm on their Twitter, and he talked about basically, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was something along the lines of like your team should embody your personality. And I think that competitive spirit is, when you watch our teams play, you see that mentality come out. Like we're intense, we're in your face, we are disciplined, because I wasn't always the biggest, I wasn't always the best, but I knew if I was focused on the details, I was going to find success as a playmaker or scorer, whatever team I was on and whatever role, I had within that team, I was willing to embrace it and be elite. And I think, creating and having those conversations on and off the floor with your guys is so important, making them feel valued, because in essence, like, Ryan Meshes is our most productive and he's our best player and he's the one that gets a lot of the accolades. But without David Flores John, or without Anthony Vick, or without guys that come off the bench to spell him, we're not going to be as successful as the top teams. And that's kind of where that's the standard now. We want to be a top 5 team annually in this prep ranks. And you can't just rely on 1 or 2 guys. So I think the fact that I wasn't always the best player, but always found a role and always was tough and tried to be as elite as possible in that role, is something that my team also embodies.
So let's talk about your first coaching stop. You were a grad assistant at Rutgers Newark. So what did that job teach you about the behind the scenes grind that most people don't know about college coaching?
Well, that job was amazing for me and so important because I was essentially the only full-time assistant. So all of the recruiting, or, Joe Blocker did a ton of the recruiting as well, but I was on the road every day. And in Jersey, there's obviously great high school basketball, but they play North Jersey games like in Newark at 4:00.
Right.
They play Central Jersey games at 6, and then you can even go South Jersey and catch an 8:00 game. So there would be days where I would be traveling, Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday, and catching 2 to 3 games a night, maybe a half. But I really got to know people in Jersey. I learned how to talk to families. I learned how to, work with coaches or scouts, and I didn't get paid much. So my mileage reimbursement was, in essence, and getting a free meal was like the perk financially. But I think I got a $3,000 stipend in a free room. And at that time, I didn't have much interest in the academic side. Of course, I did it because that was the role. But having done all that work and looking back at the end of the season, it's like, I love this. And I'm not getting paid much, but I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is what I want to continue to do for the rest of my life. So if you can take a job where you're not getting paid much and you're working 14-hour days, I think you're in the right spot. And that's unfortunately what it takes in this industry as a young, startup position to make it. So that job taught me a lot, but also made me convinced that this is what I need to be doing with my life.
So just out of my own curiosity as well, do you recall your first ever recruiting pitch to a family and a player?
No, but it was definitely butchered and probably not as genuine and transparent as it is currently. One, because I didn't know the school and the system and the lingo as well as I do now. But now, since I've been the head coach and it's my program and we've been able to establish and have examples to speak on, and some stories have gone south, and you kind of learn, like, you just have to tell it like it is. And the parents, the kid, the coach, the school need to be aligned as to, whatever the scholarship dollar amount is going to be, to what level they can potentially play at, to their role in the early going, if they're a 3 or 2 year kid at Cushing, and how that role is going to evolve over the course of their time here, or whether it's a post grad, which we usually get 2 or 3 a year from that class. So that's a 1-year situation, and just being honest about playing time and, the fall open gym, and making sure that they're okay with getting recruited in practice and during open gym. And that might mean they're not going to play quite as much in some of the bigger games. And if everyone's aligned before they get here, typically, it's a smooth process. And there's always ups and downs to everyone's basketball journey and life journey. But, I'm fortunate to be able to to assist and help kids, find their way in hoops and hopefully, later on in life as well.
So after Rutgers Newark, you went to NMH, which was a loaded and nationally ranked team. So what did that environment, which was basically, if I'm not mistaken, your first prep school environment, what did
Mhm.
being in that environment teach you about elite prep basketball?
Well, I played 2 years at Proctor, so I reclassed junior and senior year. So I knew a little bit about the structure and the way the days looked with study hall and basketball workouts in the off seasons and things like that. But yes, that was a great transition for me. Younger kids, parents are more involved, and John Carroll, who's a dear friend of mine and will forever be a dear friend of mine, taught me a ton about how to build a team and how to build a culture. And the idea again, I wish I knew the exact quote, but we're not going to compromise character for talent. And that's something that always sticks with me as I evaluate, um, kids. My assistant and I kind of created an acronym. It's called the PPP. So we're looking at the person, we're looking at the parent, and then we're looking at the potential. And parent could be could be a handler, could be, an advisor, something like that. But who's going to be in this kid's ear, and are they going to be aligned with our messaging when things aren't always going, exactly to plan? And obviously, if we're talking to you at this point, you got to be a pretty good player because again, we have a pretty strong reputation. So that's sort of the model that we've been able to embrace, and we've given up some 4 stars and guys that are definitely higher level, maybe even have high major offers to get a lesser talent with more upside, and not just on the basketball front, but fits better in the community and what the school and what the program really values most. So that's probably what I learned mostly from John and in my time at NMH.
So let's move forward to your time at Dartmouth. You were there during a historic moment, the first postseason berth in 56 years, I would say. So can you talk about what was special about that staff and team? And I want to load the question a little more. So recruiting Ivy League kids, I know from speaking to a bunch of different college coaches during their time in the Ivy League. How different is that experience, and how did that shape your eye for recruiting and fit?
Well, to be completely honest, it's obviously difficult because of the no scholarship situations. But one thing that's important to understand in prep school and in Ivy League coaching, and I don't even know if I should be sharing this, but this is just, again, I'm a pretty transparent and upfront guy. Um, if your family makes a lot of money, there could be and you're a really good player, you're a Division I Ivy League player, I'm going to go after you really, really hard. If you are low income and have unbelievable grades and your family values education, I'm going to go after you very hard. If you're upper middle class or middle class and you're going to get several offers from Patriot League schools or NEC or MAC, I know it's going to be difficult because you're going to be paying, at that time, $40,000 a year for 4 years. So, $160K, where you could be getting a free education, a free basketball experience, and probably, if you're thinking about the Patriot League, it's Ivy League's a better academic, system, but is it worth that? And it's similar here. I think there's a lot of we try and kind of, and of course I'm still going to recruit upper middle class families, but that's the first conversation. Like, are you willing to spend for a better experience? Because you're going to get, there's academies now that the tuition, the financial aid model is a bit different, and they can, over allocate financial aid or scholarship money to kids. So sometimes that's a hang up that I had, at Dartmouth, and something that I had to learn, and something that I've been able to take from that Ivy League approach to the prep school ranks in order to not necessarily waste anyone's time.
So you arrived at Cushing in 2016. Let's move to your present day position. What did the program look like when you first arrived on campus, and what did you know or think that you needed to change to make the program successful?
Yeah, we were good. We had Wabisa Beatty, we had David Duke Jr., we had Greg Quacamensa, and we had some really nice pieces. Jordan Haywood was that role player that, I just mentioned. Francis Uzor was really good, but that was it. And we were fortunate that we didn't have any real injuries. But when it came to, and I was young, I was 26 and then 27 towards the end of that year. So I was still able to play and I still jump into practice here and there. But I mean, I was playing every single day. And you miss some things when you coach. One, you're competitive, you're trying to win. So you don't, you make a great play and you don't realize like it wasn't you, it was a defensive breakdown. So I knew we had to have real depth moving forward. So recruiting younger kids and building them up and finding post grads that can sort of fill in the cracks, I thought was something that we've done a really good job of, like focusing on recruiting young kids that are talented, but develop them, give them an opportunity to play young while bringing in post grads that might be high level Division III, or maybe, sometimes we've been fortunate with some Ivy League type players and Division I players as well, but they're sort of like fillers. And I think that's been the approach that we've been able to take, and it's allowed us to grow our depth and build a team with 10 to 13 really solid basketball players, which makes for a competitive environment every day in open gym, practice, workouts, etc. So that's been a big change since year one.
Do you still jump into practice today and hoop with the
I
guys?
do. Yesterday I was in, Sunday I played, mostly because we have a few injuries and I don't want to wear these guys out. Plus, you usually know the scout and can run scout team a little bit better, more efficiently. And in this time of year, when we're practicing, we're on the floor for an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes, opposed to 2.5 hours. Earlier in the season, you got to be really efficient with your time. So mostly as a scout team specialist, that's my role as a player these days. But yeah, I love it. I still love it.
So when a kid commits to Cushing basketball, what is your pitch to them, and what are they signing up for beyond wins and the exposure that you provide?
Yeah. One thing that's really hard for kids and families to grasp, especially post grads, is like when you arrive here, you're going to have this idea of like basketball all the time. And man, I can't wait to be on the floor and all the skill development. And I'm playing with great players, exposure, strength conditioning program is elite here. We have a full-time strength coach, but then it's like the other stuff when you graduate is what you really cherish during your time at Cushing. And because we're so focused in the recruiting process on bringing in people that we can be in the bus rides with, we have 24 away games during the regular season. So we're in the van constantly. And I'd say an hour and 15 minutes is the average destination. So eat, all those meals, all those trips in the vans, all those film sessions, like you have to be not just around great kids, but fun kids and kids that, as a coaching staff, we love being around. We can keep it light, but also receptive to when it's an intense moment, being professional about it. And then those hours that the coaches aren't around in the dorms, in the dining hall, where they're going to be spending time predominantly with their teammates. They just really cherish this experience. And I just had my 200th win, and we have some players, one reaching out and sharing stories, and then my assistant coach did a great job getting some players to do like a little video. And the consistent theme was how much they learned from the program about life and just being tough and dealing with adversity and being prepared for that college system. It wasn't necessarily about, I remember this workout or I remember this win at Cushing. It was more like, this is what Cushing basketball has allowed me to be. And I've learned so much from that experience. So that's what, I'm getting away from the root of the question, but that's what we kind of cherish as a staff and are focused on.
So you alluded to bringing in high talent over your years at Cushing, and you mentioned Ryan Mesh. What has his development been like over the time that he's been there, and what have you seen in his growth?
Yeah, a lot of the best players like Ibuka Okori, who's at Stanford, Ryan Mesh, being two probably at that position, that their basketball IQ is just so far superior to even mine. Like when they step on the floor, their innate ability to look defense off or manipulate defense with their eyes and throw a no look or come off a ball screen, freeze the defense with a hostage dribble. Like we work on that stuff, of course, but their ability to take something or watch something and apply it is what makes them different. And that's why I know Ryan is so easily a high major player and can play at any school in the country, because whoever you put in front of him, he's just a smarter player. I think what we've been able to help Ryan with in development is honestly just bringing awareness to like the strength and conditioning, the sleep patterns, the a lot of the off court nutrition and strength stuff has been important for Ryan to play that kind of reckless style that he plays, attacking the rim, throwing his body at 7-footers and falling from 10 feet in the air, and being able to pick himself up and stay healthy for, knock on wood, but, the better part of 2 seasons. So I think that's something that we've been able to do with him. And then also the idea of running a team, like the leadership component, being a voice, making the people around him better, not just relying on his ability to score. He came in with almost 2,000 points from Chittenango. This is Ryan specific. Ibuka's story is a little different, but he was taking 25 shots a game. And here, you're making a big sacrifice. There's games he's taking 6 to 10 to 6 to 8 shots a game. So, but he still impacts winning at the highest level. And he understands that to play at the college high major level someday, or even at Siena, which is, going to be an unbelievable program. And Jerry does a great job, and it's going to continue to grow Ryan's IQ and basketball acumen. You just have to really buy in. And I think that's what Ryan's done a great job of. And I think we've helped to make him aware of how important that is.
So moving forward, if you can give one piece of advice to a high school player trying to level up their game and strive for more, strive to be a college athlete, what would it be right now?
Don't get caught up on what everyone else is doing or the level of AAU that you're playing, especially in the early goings. Like freshmen, sophomores, you guys need to be in the gym and you need to be working on your skills. And I also think, like we talk about having imagination. I think that the training, like the trainers, right? Like I never grew up training, not to say I was like unbelievable, but I would just go out and I would flip the ball to myself on the baseline of my driveway and pretend I was getting trapped. And what would I do splitting this defense? Okay, I get to half court and, now I'm making a read, and I flip it back to myself. Now I'm coming off a wide pin down, throwing the ball to myself and going to get my own rebound, take it out again, go against pressure. And like, I would kind of envision the way the game was played instead of, all right, 10 tween cross step backs on the left side. All right, now do it right side, tween behind the back, step back. Like how many times in a game is that move going to present? And if we're allocating, we all got lives, and I think that's important to have balance. But like, if we're allocating an hour a day to a workout where the person I'm not playing against, that's not going to be coaching me, is telling me exactly what I need to be working on, I think that's counterproductive. And we've actually had to break a lot of kids who have unbelievable work ethics, their routine, because they are robots. And watching basketball, I think, is also so important, not highlights. Figure out how to manipulate a ball screen, how to get your big guy to change the angle. If you're a big, flipping a screen and setting it in the back pocket and all those rolling hard and low and getting to those open windows, like those little details of the best players in the world, we just think like, oh, it's just happening because they're so good. Well, how do they do it? And just being really intentional about how you analyze the game, and how you train, I think is what I'd say. And then not getting caught up with, oh, this guy's got this offer, this guy's got this offer, I cooked him last week, whatever. Just keep hooping. Like, it'll work out. The cream rises to the crop. These college coaches aren't trying to get fired. They want to get the best possible players they can. And at that level, unfortunately, and in just the reality of the business, you need good players to win games. And like I said, if you're good enough, they'll find you.
So now this is for those who want to aspire to be coaches at the end of the day. So for young coaches listening who want to follow a similar path that you went through, what advice would you give them about staying patient, staying the course, and sticking to the grind?
Yeah, I think you have to find like the networking aspect of things. Like, you cannot, at least I mean, maybe you can, but finding 3 or 4 guys that you have a relationship with, that you can pick up the phone and they're going to either pick up or call you right back when you need some advice or when you want to talk hoops. I think that's important, rather than being friends with 50 people and shaking everyone's hand at the Final Four, because that's just going to wear you out. It's just going to overstretch and you're not really going to have substance in those relationships. And the way it is now, college coaches really want someone that they trust on their staff. And I just think that if you're kind of like, oh, I know this guy, and the other piece of that is like being a know-it-all. Like, we all know a ton about basketball. We're all on Instagram, we're all on YouTube, we're all on Twitter or X, watching different plays and schemes. But like, until you go through it with different personalities, because at the end of the day, it's like, it's the people, it's not necessarily the X and O's, it's the culture, it's the people. So being able to surround yourself with a mentor who understands people and how to develop the whole player, and learning from someone like that is so important, rather than not getting to know someone, but knowing 50 different people who aren't really going to explain how they build those relationships or develop their culture. I think that's something that's key. And I haven't done I definitely have that group. Like, I have 5 to 6 coaches that I really enjoy talking to. GMAC through Ryan's situation has been one over the last 3 or 4 months that I've really got to know, and I've valued that relationship a ton. But I've been fortunate growing up in the business with my dad, just knowing people and feeling like I could trust them. So that's been cool.
So last but not least, looking ahead, what still excites you about coaching basketball after all this years and, as you said, being in this business for so long? And also, what else are you aspiring to do in your career?
Yeah. Well, it's always that competitive piece, right? Like, just continuing to challenge and grow. My wife was joking with me yesterday. There was like an article on New England Hoops Journal, and I was all pissed off at leaving practice yesterday, and I was in the dining hall, and we just aren't competing the way I would like. And I know it's late in the season, but the article essentially was like, Cushing has solidified themselves as the #1 seed in AA. And ironically, I'm like so fired up at how poorly we practiced and how we just didn't play with the sense of purpose or intent that I would like. And that's just what it is. Like, it's really hard to be great. So yeah, it's going to be stressful, and it's going to be intense, but you have to hold yourself to a high standard, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And that's what keeps me going, just trying to be the best. In terms of what I want to do long term, I got 2 kids, 3 and 4 years old, and I have a baby boy coming this summer. So for the foreseeable future, thank you. For the foreseeable future, I'd like to remain here where my family is 300 yards away in a very comfortable house on campus. You know, my office is 100 yards from the gym. I have an unbelievable setup. The school appreciates what I do. Great AD, great head of school. So I don't see myself going anywhere in the next, 2 or 3 years for sure. But my goal is always to be a Division I head coach and win a national championship. And I've said that from 14 or 15 years old. And there's been years and situations in my life that presented that make me think that might not happen. But in the back of my head, that's always my goal. And I've always said, I don't need to be the youngest or the first to do it. But ultimately, when the time is right, that's the position I'd like to be in.
Well, Coach Cormier, thank you so much for this opportunity. I wish you the best of luck with the rest of the season, and let's go get that championship.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate you having me on, and that was great. It was good spending time with you.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.